Brandon Lapier and Jesse Dujari. And for today's episode, we have a special guest for you, Brad Johnson, who is a psychic healer, spiritual teacher, and a channel of a sixth density energy being known as Adronis. So welcome, Brad, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you being here. For the listeners that we have that aren't familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit of how you got started doing the channeling of Adronis?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people can really just check out a lot of the stuff that I do on my website. It's realitywhisperer.com. There's a whole About Me section there, so I won't get too much into it, but kind of an elevator version is that this started for me back in 2008. I just started getting into a spiritual journey as I was researching a novel, and this novel became a book that I eventually wrote, and it's also becoming a TV series that I'm starting to work on as well now too. But it was basically that novel, through all the research I was doing, that woke me up. And basically, I started getting into meditation, I started getting into channeling, I started getting into psychic development, I started getting into remote viewing, I started getting into the Akashic Records. Everything exploded. Channeling was one of the most interesting areas that I really wanted to explore because I met some channelers online. The very first channeler I met, I believe her name was Magenta Pixie, and she had a channel on YouTube and has a really big following. And I started to talk to her and just started getting information about channeling through her. And then I started meeting other people online, and I just found the entire channeling phenomenon amazing. So I decided to go from kind of like an investigative reporter, from looking at channeling in that way, into actually doing it, into getting involved with it. And so a lot of people showed me different techniques, and I kind of just melded them all into my own. And I started connecting with a few different collective consciousnesses, you know, the Pleiadians, the inner earth beings, etc., the Lyran Soul Collective. And eventually there was just it came to the point, to the being that I channel now, Adronis. And it came through a friend of mine who was also a professional channeler who did it for several years. And he basically just talked to me one night on the computer and said, "Bro, Brad, you know, we have a very strong connection with Sirius. It's a very strong energy with you relating to the Sirian energy. And I feel like if you tap into that, there's going to be somebody there who wants to talk to you." And so I decided to take him up on his advice, and I connected through my own way to the Star of Sirius, and connected with this other particular intelligence. And this intelligence identified himself as Adronis, basically said that he was a version of me 297 years within the future. He's come back at this time to share information with me and helping me with my own spiritual evolution. And as I evolve, I'll be able to share all this evolution with everybody else. So it's a very strong collective principle in that way. Is this something you would like to do? And so I agreed. And since that day, everything started to change. So it went from, you know, kind of communicating with him through inspirational or automatic writing at first, and then it got more into vocal channeling, very similar to what Jane Roberts did with Seth, Esther Hicks does with Abraham, Darrow Anka does with Bashar, very much to that degree on a vocal level. So it took a couple months for me to really get into the vocal range, but I basically just liken it to the idea if people are already familiar with automatic writing or inspirational writing. It's basically the same thing. All you're doing is you're pulling it into vocality instead of writing it out. So it's basically kind of like how an actor gets into a character. And you're basically moving yourself in between the alpha and theta wave bands of the brainwave state. And so basically what happens is when your brainwaves synchronize, you get telepathic transmissions. You get identical thoughts in the same moment. And that's basically all Adronis is doing, is he's sending me this ray of thought forms that are coming together through me, and I'm enacting that as my own thoughts. And that's basically what's coming through. So I'm not leaving my body or anything like that. It's a very conscious state of channeling. So that's basically how I learned it in that particular way of describing. So it's very, very hard for me in the past to describe, well, how does this work? Well, all right, let me see if I can get Adronis to help me with this a bit, right? And then he threw in a bunch of mechanical, technical stuff. Yes, in this way, and I just, okay, let's keep it simple. Right? Here's a brainwave. Here's a brainwave. Here's my brainwave. They sync. Boom. They hit lockstep vibration. And the conscious channeling state begins. So that's basically how I go. So it just usually takes me a few moments to kind of get into the nice relaxed space and get into a state of centering. And then the transmission starts to come through. Adronis just comes through naturally. Him and I are basically just one and the same being in that way.
It's funny you said, you know, the easy version. My husband, he's always saying, "Jesse, can you give me the Bill's notes version of what you're trying to tell me?"
Yes, it's always easier that way. Well, I always try and stick with the science of the simple, and that's what I refer to. Adronis gave me that phrase, look into the science of the simple, right? When I've had sessions with him in the past, there's been people who want that really heavy technical information, and Adronis will give it to them. Like people have asked how to build spacecraft with Adronis. Now that's very hard for me because I'm not too scientifically, mathematically minded, but he tries to simplify it in the way that a lot of how spacecraft are built. Basically talking about free technologies, free energy technologies that can be constructed as well too. So there's a lot of stuff. I've talked to scientists in the past as well too. They get a little disappointed because, oh, Brad, you gotta get more complex. I said, I'm not a rocket scientist, right? It's challenging for me to really go into that type of interpretation, but they're getting the pieces of the puzzle to help put that together. So it's amazing with a lot of the information that he comes through with. It's very, very powerful, and it's very, very broad.
I was curious, before we get too much into channeling information, I was reading through on your site and you talk about light circuitry healing. Can you describe that a little bit to me?
Yeah, light circuitry was something I discovered back in about 2011, I believe. And around that time, it was something that I heard Bashar talk about it. He basically referred to it as sacred circuitry. And then I started meeting other friends who did a lot more advanced circuitry in that particular way. I've had a few friends on Facebook who did it in almost like these beautiful mandalas in that way. And I started looking into this myself. So this is very interesting. So I started looking into ancient cultures. I started looking into ancient writings as well too, and discovering that all of these different ancient languages are all just different levels of sacred circuitry, or light circuitry in that way. So light circuitry basically stands for light language, sacred circuitry. So I basically put light circuitry together to give an initiation of both ideas. And really what it entails is just going into an intuitive state, just kind of moving yourself into almost kind of like a light trance, and basically just receiving these symbols that you'll get. It doesn't always have to come through clairvoyantly. It doesn't have to come in through sight in that particular way. It's like automatic writing. You're basically having a piece of paper down, and you're saying, yeah, I'd like to heal this neck ache I have, or I have this headache in the back, in the back of my head, and I want to be able to work this out. I want to be able to work on healing it. And so you're basically having a piece of paper with you, and then you're just trusting the flow that comes through, and now this symbol is being drawn. And this symbol is now being utilized in meditation. You can also put it under your pillow at night, and as you go to sleep the next morning, you feel 100% better. So there's a lot of amazing features that this particular light circuitry does. It's kind of like an archive file on a computer, or like a zip file. We're basically getting this particular type of symbol archive, and through our meditation, through our intention of incorporating it into us, that energy is now unfolding, and it's working like code. And so one of my posters on the site with light circuitry says life is code, right? And that's basically what this entails. It's kind of like just like a programmer being able to open up this file and have all of this light code of information coming through you. It can also follow with certain forms of mantras or chants. So some of these chants, in that sense, there's people online who have done light language chants as well too. Like you really can't understand what they're saying, but it's beautiful. There's a kind of a musical quality to it. So it's like trying to understand music. In that way, it moves you, it lifts you, but you can't understand, what what it represents on a vocality level. But that's basically how light circuitry works. It combines a circuit or a symbol together with the idea of a mantra chant, and being able to incorporate this into your body to assist with repair, rejuvenation, enhancement.
So it's kind of like a collection of energies bundled together through this symbol, essentially.
That's right. Yeah. This is what they would do in the old days too, as well with alchemy. They would do it as well, and do it in certain forms for rituals as well too. Is they would create these symbols, or what's also known as arrays. A lot of the Wiccan faith would also use the idea of sigils in that particular way, which is again just different forms of complicated areas of subconscious patterns from an original phrase, and basically making it into this like subconscious glyph, and then being able to focus on that and starting to feel the effects of it. So light circuitry works a little bit more different than either of those. It's more so, again, that these are universal symbols that are coming through, and everybody will have their own interpretation of what these symbols represent. So if I had a symbol that was about, healing a headache, and it's just basically the letter Z with a circle around it, and I'm being able to do the chant, that is effective of me. If I have another person that says, well, here's a T with 3 dots and a little arc over it, and that's my symbol for healing a headache. Great. Because that's basically the vibration that we all resonate at, because we're all just different dances of unique frequencies. So everybody will get a different way of doing that. So I have the ability to tap into another person's field, into their matrix, communicate with their own higher aspects, and being able to bring these particular types of symbols through them. It's kind of a collaboration between my own higher self and theirs. And so they're basically getting these symbols that I'm creating for them, and then I'm telling them exactly how they can use it after it's done.
That's awesome. Great way to describe it too.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like supplementing what's missing or what's out of alignment or off tune for their own energy by creating a symbol that will harmonize it all in together.
That's right. Yeah, it's basically that they'll come to me sometimes and they'll say, bro, Brad, here's what I have. I have a backache problem, or I have a problem with a headache, or if I'm feeling really emotionally imbalanced. It basically works on a physical, mental, and emotional level. So it's actually helping you to become much more aware of thought forms in that particular way that are causing belief systems. That's something that can be worked as well too. It can also work through manifestation as well too, being able to attract more money, financial abundance. The sky's the limit with it. It really just represents all of these different types of codes. Sometimes a person will just say, oh, Brad, can you just scan me and see what you come up with and see what happens? And I'm actually using light circuitry to scan them, and then creating more light circuitry to discover remedies to the certain situation at hand.
And how would you describe that as being different from attunements? I noticed you also do abundance attunements and various attunements on your site as well.
Yeah, abundance attunements are a little bit different. They're more so working more directly with feelings. So if we're looking at light circuitry, that's dealing more with codes, more with light symbols and intuition in that way, and light language chanting. Abundance attunement is more so working together with a person's own emotional states and discovering what emotions are not serving them, and being able to work together with them, trying to help them loosen up with that feeling, and then being able to release that emotion, and then having another emotion take its place. So they're basically different types of attunements. So light circuitry will work together in kind of more of a subconscious way. Abundance attunements works more in a conscious way, with one's own feelings and one's own emotional field, to allow that energy to subside, and new energy coming in together to help alleviate the entire issue.
Yeah. I find that that's very similar to how we work, really. We work with blueprints and with strands of energy and attunements and adjusting of frequencies, removing of beliefs or transmuting of beliefs, and it's awesome. You also have on your website, reality is the mirror. I love that. Yeah, mirroring is so essential to understand if you're trying to do any sort of self-work.
Yeah, and this is what I refer to myself as a reality whisperer. Like before, I was called the conscious matrix, and people didn't really get what that meant. And so when I changed my name to the reality whisperer, now people say, oh, okay, that makes more sense. So you're basically talking like the secret messages of reality. I said, yeah. It's basically being able to understand that reality is a mirror. It's a gigantic, hologram, and it's always communicating with us in all the ways it possibly can, through actions, through people, through situations, through environments, etc. And all we're basically doing is just opening ourselves up and discovering what reality is trying to tell us.
Mm-hmm. The way you describe the light circuitry healing, it reminds me of. If I were to describe it, like individualized holographic entrainment.
Very true. Yes, it's very much like that. Just being able to, a lot of people interpret it differently through certain forms of light circuitry, but it is really just dealing with holographic aspects, and being able to entrain yourself in that particular way of understanding more about yourself. There's so much to light circuitry. I've just scratched the surface. You can basically use light circuitry to really go much more deeper into your states of enlightenment. So it's very, very vast, the capabilities of it.
I agree. I find that the more you look into it, the further you go down that hole, the bigger you realize the hole is. It's the cavern.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, wonderful. One of the things that I was asking Brandon about, we're noticing that when you start to talk about certain subjects or bring up certain phrases or terms, the energy, it's like the energy gets stronger, and your recording sound starts to blink in and out just for those those words.
Mhm.
And so I was asking Brandon, I said, do you feel like that's
Yeah.
Adonis coming
Adonis.
through?
Mhm.
And he was like, yeah, I think so. So I'm curious, do you sense anything have you noticed anything going on while we're recording?
Well, when Adronis comes through, it's basically that there can be those things. There's power words in that sense. So basically, when I'm talking, I attempt not to speak too much from the ego in that particular way. At times when I'm not, when I'm not too much in the workforce, my working energy in that sense, and I'm just basically very casual, I'll talk with myself in that sense, in my own way. But basically, when I'm doing these types of conversations, it's very intuitive flow that's coming through. So Adronis can represent that particular type of energy. He's just a representative of that type of flow that I go through. So he represents that mirror aspect to me. But basically, when I'm talking through in this way, it's basically, I guess you could say, the Brad Collective in that way. That's communicating on my behalf as well too, as I'm communicating this information. But Adronis is basically kind of like the PR guy to those kind of higher celestial, extra dimensional type energies.
I also noticed as you kind of like acknowledged that verbally, the light started shining even more on your face, and now you're like all lit and it's a glow. It's like dawning of the light. You see, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
It's those little signs that
it's a nice little area I've chosen for the spot of the interview. Yeah. So.
It is very nice. Thank you. Well, we were curious, like, if you feel comfortable, if Adronis would like to come through and talk with us, we would love to hear what the collective has to say.
Yeah, sure. I will go ahead and bring him through. So it just takes a moment or two to come through. Once he comes through, he'll just give a brief introduction to himself. And any questions you guys have, feel free to share. My throat's getting a little bit weird today, so hopefully it'll hold out too well. But if there's any problems, I'll let you guys know. But it should be okay.
Sounds great. Please do.
Thank you.
Feel free to drink water.
Okay.
I got water too.
All right, no problem. Okay, here we go. We are here at this time, and we bid you greetings, and thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction today. I am Adronis of Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning in to this particular broadcast being brought forward through your internet collective consciousness. Thank you very much, and how may we assist you today?
Well, first I want to say hello and welcome.
Hello to you.
And thank you.
And thank you.
Yes.
As well. First, I guess I wanted to ask you, is there anything that you would like to say to us before we start? Is there anything that you feel would be great to share before we begin?
All right. Are you referring to yourselves or to your audience?
Oh, I would say to our audience, but I mean, if there's something.
If there's something for us too.
We will get to that, certainly. But we say hello to everybody who is, again, tuning into this particular broadcast. We understand that many of you may be curious about our origins or where we may emerge from in that sense. So in a nutshell, we represent that of a Sirian collective consciousness. We are that of what you would know as the raw energy. Now, the raw energy particularly corresponds to the idea of certain collectives, certain clusters of intelligences. Our particular intelligence represents that of, shall we say, the Canis Major system or the Canis Major constellation that you would understand. But we basically represent ourselves as beings of starlight, existing within the star of what you have termed upon your planet, Sirius A. And so we have, in that sense, decided to connect together with you through the idea of love, through the idea of being able to connect with family, because you are very much a part of us as we are very much a part of you. And that through this particular time in your history, throughout your period of living here on this planet, you are going through tremendous fundamental shifts. You are starting to reawaken yourselves. You are moving into a cycle right now where much of the information that is coming through this particular conduit via a channeling state is now, in that sense, becoming a lot more widely acceptable. And through this particular state of wider acceptance between this conduit and everything that he shares through our particular form of connection and feed, This, in that sense, information is becoming very helpful to many people upon your planet. And so this is exactly why we do what we do, and being able to, in that sense, assist in this particular way, that this conduit has aligned in regards to a path that is, again, mutually acceptable to our own. And this is basically how you are receiving this particular transmission right now, through the idea of synchronicity, through the idea of the synchronization of waves of consciousness that are interlocking, interweaving, and harmonizing here and now, in this very moment. And so we introduce ourselves as guides, as assistants that can come together and assist you in certain ways in any particular form of modality that you decide is appropriate. Again, we are not here to do work for you. We are not here to save your people in any way. We are simply here to be messengers. We are simply here to be teachers and to be guides, to helping you along your path so that you yourselves can be the true messengers, the true guides, the true teachers, and the true doers, because it is your planet. This is exactly what you have signed up for. You have come to this planet to change it. And basically, this planet is being changed fundamentally, very, very largely, widely, broadly, in the ways that you have all agreed to associate with yourselves. And so we have simply come here to be of assistance to family.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Yeah, as far as those changes, some people I know have talked about in different chat rooms and on Facebook, being very frustrated at seeing the lack of rapid movement. Even though there is a lot of rapid movement, sometimes it feels like it's not going fast enough. And then you look out there and you see a lot of turmoil with the terrorist activities and stuff like that. For some people, they feel it's a very uphill battle. What would you say to those people on the state of the world and the appearance of the turmoil, and how they can help get everybody past it, how they can further do their part?
Well, here's looking at it in a particular way. Anytime you perceive the world through a media outlet, you are looking through a looking glass, and you're not actually seeing the world at all. And that's basically the most important part. You will not understand the world through your media outlets. You will not understand it through your internet websites. You will not understand it through any particular type of criteria that represents press. The only way you will ever experience the full scope of the world is basically when you are fully in your own. And that's the whole key, is being able to live together in your own world, being able to travel, to explore, to meet people, to, in that sense, completely journey throughout the entire reality that represents your world, because that's the only world you really will ever know. So the whole idea is that when you get caught up in much of this looking glass pertaining to the idea of mass media, pertaining to the idea of press, you are only looking at very small fragments pertaining to what that looking glass wants you to see in regards to how you perceive the world. So we would say that there is no way for you to understand what the world is by looking through a looking glass that is not your own. So it is very, very important not to rely so much into the idea of the media, be it positive or negative information. It doesn't matter. It is more important about how you perceive the world, the people around you. How is your world? If you were to turn off the media for a day and being able to focus entirely on your world, the environment that exists around you, the people that are in your life, everywhere that you wish to explore, how is your world doing? Well, Adronis, it's actually pretty peaceful. Well, there you go. That's giving you the indication that your world is quite peaceful. Because here's the thing, 95 to 97% of your world actually is quite peaceful. The 3 to 4 to 5% truly is the idea of those little itty bits of fear. And it's between that 3 to 5% ratio within your world scope that is focused on in majority through your mass media. And those are the prisms that wish to convey that light and share it through that looking glass to show you, oh, this is what the world represents. No, it doesn't. Not even close. And so the whole idea here is being able to let go of the looking glass. Certainly you can look at the idea of media in that sense to be informed in certain ways, but if you feel that that's all there is to the world, you haven't even begun to explore the world. Because only worlds that you can explore are the worlds that you are in, your own personal earth, your own personal world. That's what's the most important.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm very careful about the media I expose myself to for that very reason.
Even be aware of your own grassroots, because it can
Mhm.
still move more so into that area as well too. Again, the only truth that you will discover is through your own eyes and your own perception.
I totally agree. One of the things I was curious about, we talk a lot about time on our show and how humans experience time in a linear fashion, because it's the way that it organizes our experience. And I'm curious, as I know that we have already shifted into the 5D, but as
5D Earth,
people, I'm sorry?
the 5D Earth, yes.
Yeah, the 5D Earth. As people begin to develop their senses and their understanding of this, will their sense of time start to shift and change?
The only thing that time corresponds to is memory. So any time that you put memory into something, you're enacting within time. And this is basically how karma, in that sense, inhibits itself as well too. Karma acts within memory. Memory acts within time. Time is karma. Time is memory. And basically, as long as you're existing in the past and the future, you will exist within time. If you are existing in the present, you will be beyond time. And that's really how it is. This is why many of your ancient teachers have said, be present, be here, and be now. And as you are here and now and are present, you are timeless. And that is, in that sense, the truthfulness of the situation. You can basically be timeless. If all of you lived completely in the present, you wouldn't age. We basically mean that in a very serious way. That the idea of being fully present, immersing yourself 100% in the now moment, will actually allow you to be ageless.
That's awesome. So that's why when we get into deep meditations, it does feel like it's time and spaceless. Your energy is
Correct.
that you can,
Because you aren't even aware of your own body. All you are is truly presence, just pure awareness.
That's awesome.
This is how, in that sense, many different meditators have been able to, in that sense, reverse their aging process through their bodies, is through the idea of remaining present within meditation. Meditation does not have to have a focus. It does not have to have an intention. All it really requires is stillness, is simply being. And when you are in that particular state, everything that represented the time, karma, memory field now becomes inert. And all that remains is the idea of you being fully present.
How would you say someone practice being present to the point where they could actually control their experience a little bit more, or have more influence on their experience?
You cannot control your experience, period. The idea is that control is what's gotten you into the mess in the first place. The whole idea here is that you want to go beyond the idea of control. Now, it is not in the sense of attempting to ignore or bypass your true feelings. It's allowing your true feelings to be expressed, because in order for one to truly be still, they must address the situations that they feel that their emotions are telling them that still exist. And so it's paying attention to your feelings. It's being able to, shall we say, let go of the defensive fields. And that the defense shields themselves have represented the idea of a control matrix. Anytime you are enlisting yourself together and subscribing yourself together with the idea of control, you are becoming more and more lost. You are wandering in a maze that has no end. And so basically, as you unsubscribe from the idea of control, you unsubscribe with the feeling of having to be in command of controlling every single thing in your reality, and just letting that go and allowing the defense shields to be dropped and listening to what your feelings have to share, and being able to bring those shadows back into a state of acceptance, of realization, of acknowledgement, of forgiveness, of liberation. Then you are moving more into the aspect of a presence, because there is no longer anything lingering at you, gnawing at you, saying, hey, it's about time you paid attention to me. So the more that you can allow yourself to listen to your shadows, embrace those shadows, forgive those shadows, and allow those shadows to be liberated, the more that you are able to gain much more fundamentality together through presence.
Wonderful. Yeah, one of the things I was thinking about was there sometimes people, when they get in car accidents, for instance, time, and I had one of these experiences myself where time seemed to stop, slow down to a crawl where all sound disappeared and your thoughts are moving at the same speed that you normally would think of them. So time seemed to slow to a crawl, and what I understand that you're saying is the difference between that experience and another experience where a person has, where they don't have that and they just go straight into the wreck, is kind of counterintuitive, where it's actually the going straight into the wreck is the result of trying to control the situation, where the opposite is more of allowing the situation to unfold naturally.
Correct.
Being present. Okay.
That's right. And you would understand that those in that sense who have had car accidents have felt as if time had slowed down, that basically everything has been, quote unquote, very slow motion. And that in that sense is true, because all they're doing is simply witnessing the event. Is when you are truly in that particular type of emotional state, where within just a split second this particularly happened, but a person may say that felt like it was a day long. Basically being in that particular moment, because you surrendered to the realization of something you could not see before through presence. And that's basically what this is saying, is that when you're in the moment, when you're in a deep focus and you're not attempting to control everything, everything goes so quickly, but it also feels that it's going so slowly at the same time, because you are so immersed within the moment. The moment is now ageless. The moment is now timeless. And this is basically where you feel that you're doing so much work and all of a sudden hours have passed. Oh my goodness, I was so immersed into this moment. It felt like it was forever. But now I noticed hours passed when it only felt like seconds. So this is basically where time itself, in the idea of attempting to catalog it, is being very contradictory, because it feels ageless, it feels timeless. It feels at a point where you're just so immersed in the moment. But again, you can't believe how much time has passed by.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah, we've one of the things that Brandon and I talk a lot about is protection. And in the healer community, there's so much focus on being protected, of cleansing your energy, of using bubbles of protection. And what we have found is that really you're protecting yourself out of your lessons by doing that.
Yes,
and
protection really isn't even necessary, period.
Yeah.
The reason why people in that sense are putting together protection is because they are afraid of themselves.
Right. It's like putting little covers over their mirrors of learning.
That's the whole idea. That's all the protection is. It's afraid to look into the aspects of yourself. And so the more that you move past the idea of protection and more in the idea of embracing and being able to, again, as we stated, taking down the defensive shields and allowing yourself to embrace what is the most horrible thing that can happen. Oh my goodness, a demon could come into my reality and possess me right here. So what? Allow the experience to come together. If that happens, rather than being hypothetical, and allowing to know that if the demon in that sense manifests itself before you, you already know yourself to be a light worker. Yes, you already know yourself to be of love. If such a being comes into your reality, what is stopping you from sending you all that love? Well, because everything that they may represent in regards to physical hideousness. But again, that's only looking at yourself skin deep. And understand that in order for a being like that to actually materialize into your reality is because there's a lesson together within yourself that you're not seeing. So protection in that sense is no more different than a young child cuddling themselves in the corner with a blanket over their head and feeling that they don't want to look at themselves. They want to stay within their world. So we do not really, in that sense, fundamentally subscribe to the idea of protection. Now, if people want to use it, that's, of course, their choice. But the idea is that protection really isn't necessary. Once you start to open yourself up and are having, shall we say, a joyous time looking at your darkness, because the darkness, in that sense, is all part of a lesson. It is actually your teacher in this reality. That's what darkness is meant to do. It is your subscriber. It is truly the teacher that is helping you to see the extremes that you have brought yourself together through the idea of feeling that you have given your power away to other forms. And so basically the darkness is saying, well, this is what you've created. This is what you've done. This is how you see yourself. This is how you perceive others. This is basically what you've aligned yourself to. At any given moment, you can step out of the darkness and come back into the playing field, as it were, rather than going constantly out of bounds. And so the whole idea here for protection is that it only happens when you're afraid to look at yourself.
You refer to, in some of your talks, as the Earth being the grand university for masterful souls.
That's correct.
So I have a lot of my clients and friends and people that I know as they're starting to kind of awaken to this consciousness and starting to meditate and gain an awareness. they come to me and they're like, well, what am I? And I'm like, well, you're here. You're a being that's here, that's learning and growing and assisting and shining your light. And they're like, but what am I? And I feel like I always tell them, you'll find that on your own as you're exploring, but that's not as important as knowing that you're here right now, that you've chosen to be here. Do you have any thoughts on that?
The idea of who and what, the idea of who am I, what am I, are the idea of conjectures that many humans have given themselves because they feel that through identification is the revealing of themselves. Identification has never been the revealing of yourself. And this is why people who constantly ask that question, who am I, what am I, will never really get a clear response, because that's not exactly telling you what you are or who you are. The idea is that as long as you continue to address this through an identity complex, you will never understand your nature. Your nature comes through the idea of all that represents experience. Everything that you come in contact with is yourself. Every person you see down your street, your family, your friends, your children, your wife, your husband, other people upon the planet, every other being in creation is all you. Every event that you go through is yourself. Every situation that you come in contact with is yourself. And that's the idea. So it's not so much the idea of feeling, well, who or what am I, because that's playing with the proxies, the parts of reality that are communicating back together with you. So you cannot answer that question, who am I, what am I, because you'll only be lost in the idea of a particular form of parentheses, of an aspect of yourself that truly is only a small cookie crumb compared to you. So it's not so much in the idea of saying, who am I or what am I? It's what am I capable of? Who is it that is basically observing this? And being able to see that the universe is yourself, and that everybody within it is yourself, and that space, time, matter, energy, consciousness, etc. is all a part of yourself. And so the question of why you're here on this planet does not come out from a who am I or what am I, because there's no such thing. There is only the idea that you are all things. And what is it that you are attempting to realize as you experience everything that reality has to offer you? How have you treated yourself through everybody else that exists around you? That's basically the question. What can I do to further be of service to the collective consciousness? What can I do to further see myself through everybody else? Because you're never an individual. That is all part of the illusion. So there really is no I. There is truly the all, the isness. That's truly what you are. But you are utilizing the idea of an I am mentality as a state of individualized consciousness to give a level of importance or uniqueness. So again, looking into the ultimate philosophy in that particular way of understanding is to understand the ultimate itself, rather than the idea of a singular aspect.
I love that term, isness, the isness.
That is
Stepping
correct.
into that.
All that is.
Yeah, and so that kind of brings me to one of my other questions. Was you mentioned being rainbow wise, and coming into a rainbow self. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, this would basically represent the idea, in that sense, surfing the spectrum of reality and understanding that contrast is exactly why you're here on this planet, is that everything here has a light and a dark, and has mixtures of different colors, has a darkness, has a light, etc. So the more that one is able to look into the realms of their own darkness and start to befriend those energies through those levels of darkness, are able to move into the higher spectrums of the rainbow light. Moving also into the idea beyond the rainbow light, into the gold rays, the silver rays, the white rays of consciousness. So basically, one who is rainbow wise has no fear in being able to surf the rainbow spectrum of reality, being able to look into the idea of contrast and realizing that even when I'm feeling these quote unquote dark times, they're all here to help benefit me. They're all here to help assist me in that particular way, so that I can grow and see myself in regards to the aspects of the entire spectrum that holds myself. So it is basically those in that sense who are willing to go into the full contrast of life, unharmed, untouched, completely imperturbable through that idea, and seeing themselves as the greater consciousness themselves, all that is.
Can you speak a little bit about how that relates to enlightenment and what your view on enlightenment is?
Well, enlightenment in that sense has no goal. It has no focus. It has no momentum to it. There is no, shall we say, levels to the point of feeling that I'm enlightened, what's next? No. It's the idea that enlightenment truly is your understanding of creation. It is to be with the Creator. It is to be with creation itself. It is to be still. It is to be omnipresent. It is to be all. It is to be one. It is to be now. It is to be forever.
So enlightenment then isn't a destination, but rather a way of journeying.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but in that sense, not even a journey. It's not even a journey at all. It's not even a momentum. It's not even a task. It's not even an adventure. It simply is, and that's it. The idea that you are moving past everything that you would understand experience to be, and completely immersed in omnipresence, in isness, in stillness, in creation, all together. That is what enlightenment is, because you are returning back into God consciousness, godliness in that way. So many of you in that sense pursue the idea. You pursue the idea of feeling that you want to be enlightened in that sense. But again, that's the reverse effect. I want to be an enlightened person, while you've completely contradicted what enlightenment is. The idea in that sense is that enlightenment does not need to be sought. You already are an enlightened being. You don't need to look for it. There's nowhere. It's not hiding under your couch. It's not hiding under your fridge. It's not hiding anywhere. It's already here. So what you are basically doing is stripping off the layers that you already understand that represents not that of enlightenment, and moving into the idea that when you strip away all the layers, all that remains is light. That is the idea of to lighten yourself.
Perfect.
Yeah. Enlighten. I love that. I love that. So another question I was curious about is the crystalline. Everyone's talking about crystalline energy coming in, and this kind of
your Earth is one big gigantic crystal.
Right.
So
it's one quartz crystal.
Yes, in a way. Understand that the crystal energy, the crystal form in that way, is basically being expressed because of the incubation of energies that are coming through. It is like a power center. So it is receiving all this particular type of cosmic energy. Now understand this. Your Earth has already experienced a pole shift. We're already talking about this in the idea of a physical pole shift. We're not talking about a magnetic one. Your Earth has already reached that wobbling state of a physical pole shift. This was actually in thanks to much of the crystalline nature within your world that is actually assuming the properties of all of this energy being collected cosmically so that it could tilt itself in a particular way, and in that sense allow itself to experience this particular type of shift. This is why many of you in that sense are going through such a different world right now, because it is not the same Earth that you would understand several decades ago. You're on a completely different planet.
And so that's why we're seeing the global changes that are being referred to as climate, climate change and global warming and all the weather patterns shifting.
Yes, we mean this as literally as possible. You have experienced a highly new manufactured Earth. So the whole idea is that why we call it manufactured is because many other realities have converged through their own Earths to create this brand new Earth. Now, this is basically in regards to something that has been referred to as the Mandela effect. That people in that sense have actually had memories of different forms of events, of different types of people that have occurred in their own dimensional reality histories. Different than, shall we say, what is actually happening on the collective histories of this planet. So basically, that is an integration of several different parallel universes that are coming together, conjuncting themselves, and actually birthing a brand new Earth that you are all a part of right now. So we mean it very literally when we say this is a brand new manufactured Earth.
There's a bunch of different theories on the pole shift and what's going to happen and how do we prepare for that. Oh, okay.
So what would you say then?
The idea is that there still will be, shall we say, little bits of wobbles here and there. Now, you've already gone through it. You've already experienced the idea of a pole shift. This has been happening very gradually since the time of 2004. So again, it has been happening very, very lightly, very gently in that way. and that many of the earthquakes that you have been experiencing upon your planet is one of those particular forms of trajectoral effects to move it into a particular type of alignment. Some may ask, well, Adronis, why do we need to go through this pole shift? Because it's no more different than straightening an antenna to get a good signal.
So you don't see that there's going to be an actual pole reversal like some people have said?
No, as we stated, the pole shift has already happened.
Okay.
So the whole idea in that sense is that if there is pole reversal, it is a magnetic. It is not a physicality.
Right.
So the whole idea in that sense is that the poles have already shifted magnetically in that certain ways. This is why many of you are discovering that the sun is actually rising up a little bit more differently, that the winds upon your climate have changed as well too. In fact, the Inuit are the very first to let you all know about this, because they are, shall we say, masterful at understanding the environmental sensations of reality upon your planet. And so they have already admitted to many of your own governments that yes, the poles have shifted, the Earth has shifted. We're on an entirely different planet right now, admitted by the Inuit. And so again, this is basically where you are. You're moving into a new planet. Again, as we stated, there will still be little bits of wobbles here and there, but nothing that will lead to a catastrophic aspect. Here's the thing. All of you have graduated past anything representing catastrophe ever again. So the idea of feeling that your world is going through some sort of mass extinction is averted. The idea of feeling that you're going through some type of post-apocalyptic doom in any particular way, an asteroid collision, a major pole shift, a giant world war, etc., have all been thrown out the window. Where you are right now is coming upon the idea of challenging yourselves, improving yourselves, bettering yourselves as a collective. And the more that you work together, the more that you'll see the fruits of essence pertaining to what the 5D Earth was meant to be.
One of the most decisive topics that we have amongst humans right now is environmentalism and protecting the environment and the chemical poisoning of the environment. So what you're saying is that just another divisive tool to prevent us from created by those who are afraid of facing their collective community?
Depending again, yes, upon the masses that are, shall we say, communicating this idea that our world is so polluted and there's nothing we can do about it, is very much in the idea of attempting to program, is basically to create an apathy effect. However, this is not really happening. More people are very, very committed to assisting and improving your environment.
So our environment isn't a lost cause.
Of course not.
Of course.
The idea in that sense is that understand that billions and billions of years ago, your planet was nothing more than a volcanic ash spewing world where there was nothing habitable whatsoever, that there could be no possibility of any particular types of life forms to take place on that planet. Well, it managed to get past that, didn't it? So again, understand that nothing truly is impossible when it comes to working together with your planet. You are basically, in that sense, through your own experiences, contaminating your planet so bad, because when you actually finally turn around and see everything that you've done to your planet, you'll never do it again. Not to this world and not to any other worlds when you eventually become a galactic society. So again, this is what you are learning and saying, what can we do to mess up the world so bad that we'll never be able to do it again? Well, we're going to pollute the atmosphere. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to do the other thing. And now we're going to realize all that we've done, and now we're going to change it. There you go. The lesson has been learned. Earth will never be in that condition ever again once you start to move into improving the environment through your own needs, because you truly are caretakers of your planet.
That reminds me of something else that I heard you talking about. Let's see, we have a lot of listeners that ask us about the hollow earth theory, about Agartha. But you mentioned that there are caretakers that live within the earth that are the Agartha Network?
The Agartha Network,
and they decide who the residents, all plants, all animals, all people of the planet at any given point in time will be.
Yes. These would be, in that sense, the administrators. They are basically working together internally through the planet. Now, the reason why this is because your society is not ready to meet many of these particular types of beings. There are beings that you would know as the Nordics, in that sense that do exist in certain forms of underground vaults. There are also other insectoid and reptilian beings in that sense that also exist within the interior of your planet as well too. But also the idea of the quote-unquote kingdom of Agartha in that sense is what you would know as the heart of your world. The idea of, in that sense, a singularity that contains a monadic consciousness. And it is actually this that is, shall we say, the governor pertaining to all that exists permissibly through your planet, and that the Agartha Network represent the representatives, the administrators, that are basically deciding, shall we say, about what is actually taking place upon the planet, who can come here, who can live here, what particular forms of species are reaching levels of extinction, because their particular form of presence is no longer necessary on the planet, and being able to substitute those species with new species that are coming together, that are evolving in regards to, shall we say, smaller degrees of life forms that will eventually evolve into something more noticeable through your culture.
We've been listening to Corey Good talk about the inner network and the sphere beings, and talking about the what you're calling the Agartha Network and the societies down there shifting into a different place in their understanding and their collaboration. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit on that, and as well as the sphere beings.
Well, again, understand that the Sphere Being Alliance is a particular alliance that have been assigned at this time to basically, in that sense, govern much of what is taking place through, shall we say, the intergalactic affairs of your own star system. And so basically the idea is that much of their own authority in allowing the idea of the prosperity of the family of Earth is handed over to these particular types of beings. So basically they are being the primary facilitators. Now, as we have talked about in past instances, the idea of what we refer to as these spheres, we refer to them as prisms or proxies. And basically, in that sense, they are monitoring your entire planet. They are monitoring your entire star system. They are basically, in that sense, regulating the inflow and outflow of energy throughout your own cosmic journey throughout the galaxy, to allow a, shall we say, even dispersing of energy to again crystallize upon your planet. So they are doing a much more greater level of administrating effect, and they have been doing this for quite some time. They are only just revealing themselves right now, but truly the sphere beings, the blue avians of what you would refer to them in that sense, have been here since a very, very long time, since the beginnings. And so they have, in that sense, just had a certain form of liaison, such as the being that you would know as Corey Good, to come through at this time, because now they have reached the point to where they can unveil themselves a lot more. Now, we are not directly involved with this particular association. We, in that sense, work together in, shall we say, corroboration in that way, but we are not, in that sense, inherently connected with their particular type of alliance, though in that sense, our alliances do speak. So the whole idea in that sense is that they are collaborating and communicating with other particular types of beings. And all that's basically being discussed overall in a nutshell right now is the furthering of human consciousness on planet Earth, and eventually making you into a star-based galactic civilization.
How long do you think it will be before Earth finally graduates and the people start getting together so they can be this galactic civilization?
Approximately 2050.
2050, 2050. Oh,
Yes.
far
Nice.
out. We won't be, we'll definitely be in this body still, hopefully.
No, that's not to say that in the decades previous that there will be certain forms of hints of much of this taking place in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, understand that the dates we often give can always change, and that there can be momentums based upon how you all evolve. Now, the whole idea really in regards to how you are becoming a spacefaring civilization is entirely all up to you, because as soon as we bring this prediction to your awareness, now that prediction has the opportunity to fundamentally change. So basically what's taking place is that many of you, firstly, before you can become a spacefaring civilization, are learning to get along with each other, letting go of this idea of racism, of hatred, of wars, of impoverishment, being able to make sure that every single person on your planet is equally fed, is equally clothed, is equally sheltered, and taken care of. All of you are taking care of each other. We cannot have you, as you currently are, going out to the galaxy and doing what you're doing now. So this is basically why there is, in that sense, a quarantine that has taken place. Your entire star system has been quarantined, which means no other outside interferences can come inside. So basically you are within this bubble. And within this bubble, you are still learning to develop yourselves. Yes, the Agartha Network is here, and they are, again, doing a lot of different things behind the scenes. Basically, even working together with certain branches of your own indigenous folk upon your planet, and helping you, again, to learn the lessons of love. That's really why they're here. That's what the administrators are doing. They speak very, very secretly in that way, covertly in that way, with other particular forms of groups that are very, very, shall we say, amiable to their presence. So again, extraterrestrials in certain levels will do this with your people. The inner earth beings will do this together with your people. We're not referring to a hollow earth, but we're referring to an inner earth. That the inner beings, the inner earth beings, the Agartha Network, are doing their part as well too. So all of us are doing our part to helping you remind yourself the lessons of love. That's primarily the goal here.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of people talk about how the original species on the planet were what we would consider reptoid or reptilian
Yes, this
species.
is correct.
And so are those that are still remaining on the planet, are they living in the Agarthan kingdom?
Those in that sense that are, again, part of the Agarthan Network will live underground. Now, the idea of the Agarthan Kingdom is that it is non-physical. It is not a physical location. Now, many of you in that sense have visited it through astral body experiences, of actually being able to bring your astral transient bodies together in the idea of the Agarthan Kingdom, and actually being able to visit this and being able to see it as a grand, beautiful, majestic world, very crystalline in nature, being able to see these beautiful illuminated palaces, these beautiful illuminated structures. That is very much the idea of the Agarthan Kingdom, and that's connecting together with the heart of inner Gaia altogether. But the idea of the Agarthan representatives, part of the Agarthan networks, actually do contain certain types of cities, certain types of structures contained within the deeper vaults of your planet, to where much of these, in that sense, extensive crystalline catacombs exist.
So that's when we see like imagery that artists create where you're inside the earth and there's this glowing, inner light, and it's very beatific. What they're describing or creating an artwork of is of that kingdom.
Yes.
Mm.
And it is the idea that much of the crystals that once existed within your Atlantis are buried very, very deeply within your Earth. So think of it in the idea of a retracting of much of the energies that were available at Atlantis through the idea of crystal technology that have actually been retracted into the inner Earth.
Mm-hmm. So then the Atlantean, we've heard about how the Atlantean kingdom or community, how they destroyed themselves. How they destroyed themselves through. Sorry, Brandon, pulled our headphones out. Through their own kind of detached emotional state, through their lack of love, lack of emotional connection to their work. Is that, how does that?
Understand firstly that the Atlanteans basically became the Martian Empire, and that's basically what took place. Now understand that what took place upon Mars through the idea of an internal nuclear war that took place basically left the world into, in that sense, such a degree of chaos that the inhabitants of that planet, well within the millions, were basically being transported from Mars onto Earth, well within the millions, upon Earth in that sense, to preserve their race, basically through the idea of the intervention of, shall we say, Galactic Alliance. And so much of the Galactic Alliance decided that their best way of surviving was to take them off Mars and put them on Earth. And through that time, it is no more different, and again, we mean this very literally, it is no more different than what happened with your Spanish settlers that came across North America. So basically, much of the indigenous, through the idea, were slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
Through the idea of many of these Martian beings in that way. Mm-hmm. And basically, they started to create much of a government through the idea of Atlantis, through the idea of Egypt, etc., and started to, shall we say, spread their particular forms of idealisms throughout many of your ancient empires. But the fall of Atlantis was very much in the state of responsibility for the Martian folk that came upon your planet, and in that sense worked their way up into the inside and basically took over Atlantis in that way, corrupting many of those in that sense in higher power to say that you deserve greater things than what the gods have revealed to you. And basically this led into an all-out war, to basically war with the entire planet, to make Atlantis the idea of the dominant form of a superpower in that way. Sound familiar? Yes. So that's basically what happened. An internal war taking place that basically created such a catastrophe that millions died. And that in that sense, actually ripped apart dimensional fabrics of your own planet. And many of these other particular types of beings that were existing in lower astral realms were able to seep in, very much like how water itself soaks out of a punctured plastic bag. And basically, many of these particular types of energies were brought in through the idea of rituals and through the idea of these types of wars. And that is basically how your Earth was in that particular condition and is moving past that particular type of condition. Earth was in such a calamity at that point that the only way for the preservation of Earth to happen was to move it into a new dimension and to, in that sense, induce it into a new platform of development, of actually manufacturing a new Earth. Had that not been thought of, your planet would have been destroyed.
Wow. So is that where we get that kind of deep-rooted, visceral fear of Martians?
In a way.
In a way.
Many of you understand also that you consider Mars as a warring planet, a planet of war in that way.
Right. It was also, named after the Mars, the god of war.
And that Mars itself was once a moon of Maldek. Representing that of the original 5th planet in that way, but truly it was more so the 4th planet. But again, understand that the asteroid belt that is now with you is in that sense once the planet, a super Earth known as Maldek.
And is that
contained
the
5 different satellites? Contained 5 different satellites. Mars being one of them, Sirius being another. Other 3 were basically obliterated in its internal combustion explosion.
Far out. That's awesome.
More so far in, it's more so in your trajectory. Just
oh, I love that you have a sense of humor. A star
we love
with
that
a
you
sense
have
of
it as
humor.
well.
Thank you.
Well, again, understand
I find humor is one of those.
The universe is a mirror. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Very much so.
You wish humor, humor will return.
Exactly. Now, Brandon and I one time I'm going to ask a specific question about us. Is that okay?
Of course.
Brandon and I one time had a shared meditation. We were just joining our energies and kind of allowing our energies to kind of mix with each other. And what we both saw was being stars. We remembered being stars and being planet. So is that connecting into that consciousness of our future consciousness, or another? Well, if you're speaking in terms of time, or other dimensionality where we are expressing like you?
We understand what you mean, but truly the idea is that that planet and that star that represent yourselves are existing right now. So there is a version of yourself that is a planet. There's a version of yourself that exists right here, right now, as a star. There is also a version of yourself that exists right here, right now, as a galaxy. And again, that incorporates everybody on this planet. That somewhere, somehow, somewhen, in that way, some reality, that there is a version of you as a planet, as a star, as a galaxy, as nebula, etc. That all exists. Because again, as we stated, individuality is only a crumb of a cookie of what you truly are. So basically understanding that when you experience these particular types of visions, this is your own, shall we say, degree of enlightenment in that way. The stillness of moving past the idea of a form that you felt was individualistic. And in that sense, coming together and realize what you have shared together in co-creation that exists in other dimensions that equate to the vibration of that feeling. To basically be the idea of a planet is joy beyond anything you can possibly imagine.
It was pretty awesome feeling. Except you kept making us go back to the star, and I was like, I want to be a planet.
Yeah, I like the star. So again, it is a life form just like anybody else, but it exists in such a way, a different type of criteria that is not individualized. It is not self. It is the idea that it is a monadic consciousness, that both of you, in that sense, your own individualities would be monadic in the idea of a planet, would be even more further to the degree of monadic within a star cluster. So again, all of these just represent different branches. This is basically what you would refer to as a 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th density experience, moving more into the idea of planets, of stars, of galaxies, of universes, coming together in that particular type of fold.
So that's what it means, shifting in density is becoming more aware of the higher embodiments of organizational matter.
Offering, in that sense, existing together in a different density of matter, where your configurations are beyond the spectrum of what you would consider to be habitable in your current density domain. So the idea of different densities in that way is existing in different forms on a lighter scale.
That's awesome.
Well, I think we're at our hour mark, and so thank you for sharing all your wonderful messages with us. If you have any final message for us or final thoughts, we'd love to hear.
Well, understand that both of you together have done this work before. You have been messengers of goodwill. You have shared much of these particular types of teachings through your ideas of Tibet, through your ideas of China, through your ideas of India. These particular areas are, shall we say, much of your benchmarks to your own enlightenment in that way, to helping you move more into your spiritual path through times past in that way. And so you are just reliving much of those particular types of incorporations, Egypt itself being one of them also. So again, understand that you are receiving much of this energy from what you would understand as past lives or other particular types of perspectives, to helping you enrich you further upon the purpose of the mission that you have selected, to allowing yourselves to evolve further, to helping others evolve further as well too, as you become the messengers of good tidings. So we thank you very much for the sharing that you are doing in this program.
And
thank you. That's awesome. That's our whole goal.
Yes.
Me, thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction. I am Adronis of Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning into this broadcast. Thank you again. Farewell for this timing, and we now return to the conduit. We will speak to you again, as now is forever, and all is one. Goodbye. All right. Hey, guys. I'm back.
Hi. That was awesome.
It's wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brad.
Yeah, so my eyes always get very, very teary when I get
mine too. I water like a faucet. It's whenever I'm channeling it.
It gets in the chest, it gets in the eyes. So, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, it's really great. It was really great. Thanks again. You guys had some great questions.
Thank you. I'm curious, how cognizant of you are you of what we talked about?
I have a pretty good understanding about what is talked about. I'm not always paying attention to the words per se. It's just more so, it's kind of like I'm in the background. I'm basically floating in kind of like a landscape in that way. Like I see like these vistas, these landscapes, and I'm kind of just floating in the background. And sometimes I'm getting images from what Adronis is saying, but I'm not always paying attention to everything he says because I have to look back in recordings and find out. But I have a general idea about what's talked about in retrospect.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time, and we're just so appreciative of you taking this time out and talking with us and sharing your amazing gifts with us. Really awesome work that you're doing, and I look forward to watching you grow and seeing all of your work. It's great.
Well,
And some more chats in the future.
Yeah, I want to thank you guys so much for having me on. So I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to seeing the recording. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, Brad.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bye, everybody.